All right. Sorry about that. Um, we're trying something new today on the live stream, and bear with me as we're actually going to use my phone to do this. Due to the first time trying to use the phone to do a live, this is going to be interesting. We might actually try to experiment with a few things, and because I can actually walk around with the phone, so maybe we'll take a look at some stuff a little bit later. But we'll give it a few minutes to get see if anybody else is going to be coming on. Looks like we got 4 people on. I know it's been a long time. It's almost been a year since we since the last live. I think the last one was I think it was said December. Was it December 30th? I think it was of last year. Wow, I've been wanting to do one and just got caught up busy with other things and but got it started back up. Hopefully we'll keep doing the once a month deal that I'd like to do. But it looks like we got some more people coming on, so that's good. They got the link. They saw that it was out there. See that we got Rick on. Hi, Rick. And we got Gary Redmond. Nice to have you guys on. And we'll give it a few more minutes. I don't want to get too carried away. Is this light bothering anybody? I feel like I got like a lightsaber coming out of my head or something. Hey, Tony. So hopefully everybody had a good Thanksgiving. It's been unseasonably warm here in Wisconsin. Actually, today, right now, it's actually 50 degrees outside, which is I'll take it. I'm not a big fan of the cold and snow, but it is what it is. So I hope you guys brought some questions with you, and if you some things to discuss. I'm just going to wing it on this one. I know I didn't put anything in the title stating that we were going to be specific about anything. Figured let's just try to get caught up, kind of tell you what has been happening in the past year. So first off, I'd like to thank all the subscribers out there to our YouTube channel. I just checked right before getting on. It's 1,394 subscribers, which is awesome. Really appreciate you guys doing that. It's it's definitely a cool thing to happen. I've always said that the YouTube channel was never designed to be, throw content out there and try to make money off of it. It was more for the content is what I was trying to put out there, not necessarily trying to monetize it or anything. But anyway, but yeah, thanks to all the subscribers out there. I really appreciate it. So let's see some things that had happened in the past year. We went to Firebird Fest again, kind of a last minute deal that takes place the weekend before Memorial Day in May. It's kind of an interesting one. We drove the car more, my 81 TA. We drove it with some friends and other TA owners. Another turbo car was in there also, a Daytona 500 pace car. We trailered to Pontiac, Illinois, where there's the Pontiac Oakland Museum, which I recommend going to. That was pretty neat. Wish I could have spent a little more time there, but that was our rendezvous point. We all met up there. I actually trailered the car to that point, but then we took Route 66 out towards the St. Louis area, O'Fallon, Illinois, just on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. But some of the events and things that we were doing for that weekend for Firebird Fest were taking place in St. Louis, also in Missouri. But Jonathan, my son, being that he turned 16 last January, he's going to be 17 this January, wanted to drive in Firebird Fest. So we unloaded the car in Pontiac, Illinois, and a caravan. I think there was five of us. I think there was 5 cars, maybe 6. I can't remember now. We all met up there and hit the road. I had a friend following with my truck and trailer, mainly just because we needed more room. And me and Jonathan just hopped into Trans Am, and he drove the whole event basically. I was disappointed because I didn't get to drive my car in Firebird Fest, but it was still a really good time. If you ever get a chance to do it, I highly recommend it. Rod does an excellent job of setting everything up. It's pretty neat because it's not just a car show. You're not just always just sitting behind your car in a parking lot in hot weather or whatever. Um, we drove the whole way. Like I said, Route 66. We hit some roadside attractions, stopped to eat. Car ran flawless. I mean, at this point, I didn't have it on E85. We were running it on pump gas because I wasn't sure I could find E85 down there. But we did the hit the roadside attractions and things like that, and it ran like a champ. The other mods, at this point we did have the electric fan on it with the cold case radiator. Um, never a hiccup. It ran great. It got into O'Fallon late. I think this was Wednesday night, and stayed at the hotel. Next morning, got up, went to breakfast with everyone. They had a poker run on Thursday, and that was pretty neat. A lot of stops along the way. Get a playing card and see who had the best hand. I'd never done a poker run before. I've heard of them. That was a lot of fun. Again, Jonathan drove the whole time. Then we had the car show at Gateway Classics, the classic car dealership. So there was a car show on Friday. Unfortunately, we had family obligations on Sunday, so we actually had to leave Saturday morning to get back because we had somewhere to be Sunday. So we didn't get to stay for the whole thing, unfortunately. There's all kinds of things. They show Smoking the Bandit at the local drive-in, which is pretty neat. We did that the year before. There's what they call the river jump. Basically, it's taking a ferry across the Mississippi River. I'm sure they've got other events. I know the last time we were there on Sunday, they had the zoo. There was the Anheuser-Busch, I believe that's what it was. The zoo, that was pretty neat. Still, it's kind of. Oh, and of course, I'm forgetting the biggest one is there's a large car show in Illinois, and I'm going to screw this up probably. I want to say it's in Waterloo, and if any of my friends are on, they can correct me. But they basically shut down the whole downtown area, blocked the roads, police escort for all the cars into the downtown area for the car show. We missed it this year because it was a Saturday. I believe that was Saturday evening. That was pretty good. We did it the time before. And then, so you have that. They also were able to go on after the car show on, car show on Friday. We got to drive on a NASCAR track in the O'Fallon area. I forget which NASCAR track. There's a drag strip there too. But we got to drive on the NASCAR track. Unfortunately, it started to rain really bad on our way to the track, but there were so many cars that they split us up into three groups, and we were in the third group, and by the time the third group was ready to go out on the track, it had stopped raining and it was starting to try to dry up on the track. So Jonathan got to go around the track probably about 35-40 miles an hour with the whole group of other Firebirds. Banked corners are pretty interesting. I couldn't help but just stare at the oil pressure gauge the whole time to make sure we were not sloshing oil away from the pickup, but it did great. Car had no problems. And then, we just loaded up Saturday morning, trailered the car all the way back to Wisconsin, but it was still a really neat experience. And I'm just glad that the car had no issues. It just ran like a champ the whole time. So that was great. Excuse me. That was Firebird Fest. Of course, we do the Trans Am Nationals every year in August, end of August. That's out in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio area. It was a hot one this year. Holy cow! And there's always interesting stories doing Daytona or doing the Trans Am Nationals. This year's main story was that I had a customer who I sold a bunch of parts to have, when he was rebuilding his engine. A beautiful 80 turbo Trans Am. He just finished everything, nut and bolt restoration. I mean, this thing, there was not one part on it that wasn't touched or one piece of hardware that wasn't touched. And he said, I'm bringing the car, but it won't start. And tried to help him over the phone prior to that. And he said, if I can't get it started, I'm going to trailer it up there. Can you take a look at it? When I get there, I says, yeah, okay. It was like 101 degrees outside. It was in a black enclosed trailer. I says, you're going to have to take it out of the trailer. Takes it out of the trailer and started figuring things out. Come to find out, the car never ran. Like, I was under the impression that the motor had been rebuilt. He had it running. He had the car at the body shop. Now the car wouldn't run. No, this freshly rebuilt engine never ran ever. Distributor was 180 out on timing, got that corrected, got everything corrected. I'm like, you never broken the flat tappet cam? He said, no. And I was like, oh boy, so there I was in a bank parking lot, not too far from the car show, breaking in a flat tappet cam in Dayton, Ohio in 101 degree weather. But it was successful. It never overheated. It ran fine. It did what it was supposed to do. Everything worked. Everything was fine. And he was able to drive the car onto the show field the next day. But yeah, that and changing out a distributor for another customer in the hotel parking lot the next evening was also interesting. Not a big deal. When you do it enough times, you can get pretty quick at it. So nice, great memories there. It actually cooled off on Sunday, and it was a beautiful day on Sunday at the show. So that's something we do every year. What else? I see we have a question from Jeannie, sorry. Any ideas where we can find Recaro seats for an 81 Trans Am pace car? Not factory seats. Your best bet is try to find a parts car, which is tough because there's only 2,000 of those cars made with the Recaro seats. They were only available in the Daytona 500 pace cars. I think Recaro is still making seats that, performance seats, and you could probably buy a set that are close. I think they have a classic or a retro seat possibly. But yeah, unfortunately, you're kind of stuck with trying to find one that's a parts car. And I just saw on Facebook somebody was advertising an 81 Trans Am. I forget where it was located, but you see it. It's white. It's got snowflakes. It's got a shaker hood. I think it had like a 76 rounded shaker scoop on it. Said it had a 400 4-speed, and the 400 was locked up. And I'm like, well, there's only a 305 with a 4-speed in the 81. But when he showed the interior, it had all Recaro seats, and I'm like, this I think is a Daytona 500 car. In fact, I know it is because the spare parts that came with the car was the turbo hood and some of the other parts, and I'm like, yep, it was a Daytona 500 car that somebody converted to a 400 4-speed with a shaker hood. A little rough. The seats were ripped up, dirty, stained, but they only wanted $4,500 for the car. Something like that. Maybe you can come across something like that, but it's going to be kind of a tough find. And if you do find a set, or at least the entire interior out of an 81 Daytona 500, things aren't going to be cheap. I don't even want to put a value on it. I've seen stuff for $1,000, $1,500 just for the seats, the front seats. And again, condition is a big part of it. Hopefully that answers your question though. But thank you. What else? A really exciting thing that we had happen was, where were we when this happened? It might have been at Firebird Fest. Basically, one of my customers, and I'd done a YouTube video of their car, Josh and Scott Mehew out of Ohio. They restored an 80 SE that was just gorgeous. They had brought us the motor, and I went through. It was a nice rebuild on the engine at some point and was in really good condition. They said it ran too. Basically just corrected some things, regasketed, made sure everything was okay internally, got it painted up the correct color, painted up some brackets, ran it, rebuilt the carb, put an upgraded turbo, things like that. And they picked up the engine. They did the downpipe and my exhaust and everything like that. And they put the car together, everything was brand new top to bottom. Brought the car back to me because they wanted to do some dyno pulls and dial it in. We had water injection on it, running, wanted to raise the boost. Unfortunately, when it was here, the first thing I noticed on the first test drive with them was that the transmission was slipping. So I did have a good Turbo 350 for it. I swapped it out for them, got the transfixed, dialed it in, wasn't able to get it to the chassis dyno, time constraint, and the machine shop that does it. We weren't able to get on there, but we did street drive it. The car ran great. They took it to Mecum auction, and they sent me the link or a video of it when it was crossing the block on Saturday. The commentators that are usually that you hear on TV, the two guys that are talking about whatever car's going across there, actually mentioned TTA Performance and saying how the car had TTA Performance modifications done to it, and that a lot of the modifications were actually kind of hidden, and that you didn't really notice that it had it, but it definitely upped the performance of the car. I thought that was awesome to have them actually say that, especially if it was actually live television that they were doing that. And the car did really well. I think it ended up hammer price. I think it sold for $59,000 or $54,000 in that range, which was great. So that was pretty exciting. That was really cool. What else? Our local drag strip over here, Great Lakes Dragway. It's 10 minutes from my house. They ended up hosting, it was one of the drag and drive events for Sick Week, the Tom Bailey event. I actually had 3 of my friends with their cars. They had entered in different classes for Sick Week. And on a Wednesday, they were here at Great Lakes Dragway. Cletus McFarland was there with his El Camino mullet. So was Steve Morris was there with his wood grain station wagon. It was pretty neat. I mean, them cars were just insane. I mean, Steve Morris ripped off like a high 6-second pass, I believe, when he was here with the wagon. And this is quarter mile. This is not eighth mile. This is quarter mile. So that was really cool. We like to go drag racing there mostly on Wednesdays because number one, it's ladies' night, so all the women get to enter and also can race for free. They have free bracket racing on Wednesdays, guys against girls. So the girls all race a bracket, and the winner of the girls and the winners of the guys race each other for a kind of a battle of the sexes that they keep track of every week. So we like to go out there on Wednesdays. Jonathan's been racing my 2001 Bullitt Mustang GT in the bracket series. I'll go out there with either the Trans Am or with my truck, just to, I don't know, kind of be in the mix and maybe help eliminate some of the competition for him. It's running the Trans Am's tough to be consistent because if it leaves on 1 more pound of boost, it ends up changing the quarter mile time quite a bit. But so we always have fun going out there. So Sick Week happened to be on that Wednesday, and they were there in the morning until about 3 o'clock, and then they were moving on to the next track. And unfortunately, the Cletus McFarland's El Camino had broke at the track. He ended up with no oil pressure. And we went back home, and usually bracket racing, the track doesn't open until 5 p.m. And we grabbed the cars, went back at like 5:30, and Steve Morris was still in the pits with the wagon. Now, everybody else had pretty much cleared out from Sick Week, and I ended up, I mean, it was pretty dead. There wasn't a whole lot of cars in the pits. And I ended up parking by him and got to chat with him. And so I ended up talking to him for a little bit, and he was on the phone at first and kind of introduced myself, and then was like, how come you're not on your way to the next track? And he's like, well, we think the engine's hurt. It's smoking out the one exhaust pipe. We think we heard a piston. We're actually looking for a place to store the car so we can go get our trailer down in Rockford, Illinois. And I was like, well, I don't mind holding on to the car for you. I says, my shop is only 10 minutes from here. It's, in a pretty secluded area out in the county roads. And he's like, well, what's the address? And he looked it up, and he's like, oh, it's only like 7-8 miles away. He's like, I can easily drive the car there. If you don't mind, I'd like to keep the car there. And I was like, wow, Steve Morris is going to keep his 6-second wagon in my driveway. Okay, I guess we could do that. So that was pretty exciting. He followed me to my house. My son was making practice runs with the Mustang to get it dialed in. and he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe Steve Morris is bringing his car to our house." And then when we got there, he's like, "Well," he says, "the smoking kind of stopped. It comes and goes." He says, "And I'm trying to decide if I actually want to, be disqualified from competition, or if I do want to keep going." And his wife was following in their SUV, and he's like, "I'm going to have a family meeting." I says, "Go right ahead." And then he came back and he's like, "I think we're going to continue on. I think we're going to go to the next track." I'm like, "Fair enough. That's cool." And he's like, "I really appreciate you, offering to store the car for us, but we're going to keep going." I was like, "All right." So he headed back out and got actually have a video of him turning around in front of my house, and that thing, neighbors were coming outside when that thing came down the road. It was pretty exciting, but that was a neat little story for the summer. I thought that was pretty exciting. I ended up getting they sent me a little care package type deal with some T-shirts and hats and cups and stickers, and it was really cool, really cool. So let's see what else. I got my notes over here. So that was Sick Week. That was pretty exciting. A lot of bracket racing, like I said. While we were out there, the been doing a lot of. You probably saw in the YouTube videos. Been doing a lot of experimenting with turbine housing sizes on the 3.0 on my car. We tried the large housing. Seemed like we had more lag. Brought it down to a little bit smaller housing, which works pretty well. But at the same time, I'm thinking I could have made the 101 housing work with more time to stall it up and get the turbo going. I wasn't really giving it a whole lot of throttle. We're definitely learned some more things for next year, some changes that we want to make. One of the things is I definitely want to put an overdrive transmission in it if we're going to do more of these kind of road trips and stuff with it. So, but we'll probably get into that a little bit later. I got people punching in stuff here. So let's see. Lisa Brown, eBay has a pair. Oh, people are commenting about the seats. Turbo cars can be. I'm sure I could be more consistent with my cars. Just more practice, and a lot of times I'm only out there because I'm trying to, learn more with the car, trying different things, experimenting, R&D. Also, sometimes just trying to go for a personal best or whatever. It all depends on track conditions too. Sometimes I'm trying to build up boost and it spins. Sometimes it doesn't. But the Trans Am actually, it's funny. So during this whole bracket racing series thing, we put drag radials on the Mustang, and the stock Ford clutch that's been in that car. I don't even know how old it was when I bought the car with 97,000 miles on it back in 2006. Here it is 11 years later and 165,000 miles on it, and never changed the clutch in it and never gave me a reason to. We tried to do a burnout first time with the drag radials on it and smoked the clutch in the burnout box. And so Jonathan and I pulled the trans, and we over clutched it basically. Put a pretty robust McLeod clutch in it and pressure plate and everything, and found out it was just a stock Ford clutch that was in it. In the meantime, he wanted to go out and race, so I let him use the Trans Am and basically just turned it to the minimum boost of like 10 pounds and told him, leave it in drive, let it shift automatically. I says, just stall it up to 2,500 RPM at the starting line and floor it and go. And it was dead consistent running like high 13s, 13.8, 13.7, somewhere in that range. And he went all the way to the final round with it. But then I think he red lit in the final round. It was great. But I mean, he was making rounds with that car. It was awesome. So yeah, they can be consistent. And what do we got here? Love this channel. I think he took the mantle of defending the 301, which got a bad rap. 3 TAs still have two. Had to sell one because of a bad financial situation. What do you think of the 307 Olds, Francisco? The 307 Olds, that's like the 305 Chevy of the Oldsmobile world. They were reliable engines. Oldsmobile did have a HO version for the Herstals and the 442s, I believe. I think it had a little hotter cam in it and some rejetting to the carb or something like that. typical Oldsmobile stuff. I'm sure something can be made with it. It's better than the 260 Oldsmobile V8. That thing's puny. But reliable engine. But if you're trying to do it from a performance standpoint, I don't know if I would go that route or not. I know that cylinder heads in those years were probably not the best, especially on a 307. I'm not a big Oldsmobile guy. I don't really work on them or anything, so I don't know a whole lot about them. So I don't want to, give you bad information. So, but I know they're reliable engines. Might want to look into maybe a 350 Olds or a 455 or something like that if you're looking to get some big power or anything. Gary Crane came on. Thank you. Just wanted to jump on to say, keep up the amazing work on a 301T and to wish you and yours Merry Christmas from the Great White North. Tom. No, thank you, Tom. Merry Christmas to you and your family, too. Oh, okay. Caught up on some questions there. Tony out in Chicago, you texted me. The answer is yes. So what else? We talked about drag racing. We're going to be doing it again next year. Jonathan wants to get into the Summit Racing Series. We have a kind of a points thing that happens also. So he's really getting into that, and that's pretty cool. I always liked we have bracket racing here. We don't have class racing. I don't think we've ever had class racing since I can remember. It's just always the only kind of competition that we have is bracket, which is fine. It's kind of nice. You get some beginners out there with their daily drivers and stuff just to have something to do and learn how to race. I've been trying to teach some of the people, some friends and stuff like that, how to drag race. It works out pretty well. What's next on my list? The Bonneville. What do you guys think of the Bonneville? And no, my wife should not be commenting right now because I already know her opinion of it. The Bonneville 77, first year for the downsized B body. First year for the 301, this one being a 301 two barrel. Still learning things that I didn't know about 301s, such as 77 has a 1 year only oil filter. The oil filter is larger on a 77. It has a larger fitting screwed into the block. Yeah, found that out when doing an oil change on it. Some things on Facebook, Ted Fox and stuff, and Rick had posted about the different camshaft specs, and we kind of had a really neat discussion about camshaft specs for the factory stuff. Found out that 77 has its own cam. Looks like 77 was supposed to have a 4-speed option for the Formula in the Firebird, and that had a special camshaft for the stick shift version, which I don't think it was ever made. I don't think a 4-speed version was ever available because according to the parts book that I have from GM, it just shows 77 camshaft with automatic transmission. Well, okay. I don't think I've ever seen a 77 301 4-speed Pontiac. As far as I know, every one of them that was a 4-speed was always a 79. 79 301 4-speed was available on the Firebird. Well, the whole Firebird line, Trans Am Formula also, but it was also in the Grand Am, Grand Prix, Le Mans, Grand Le Mans. All those cars were available with a 301 4-speed also, but only in 79. So, and if anybody out there happens to have a 79 Grand Prix SJ with a 301 4-speed, one of 242 or 239, hit me up, especially if it's got T-tops. I'd be really interested in that car. I've got a great 77 Bonneville that I'd like to work a trade. What else? Just checking over the questions that might be coming in. Yep, 79. Rick agrees. Yeah, 79 for 4-speed option. But what's interesting about the Bonneville, after doing a few little maintenance things to it, brake calipers, brake hoses, things like that, just making it roadworthy. That thing is actually pretty peppy. Here I'm thinking this thing's just going to be a slow slug. It's a heavy car, full frame, full, rear-wheel drive, 2-door coupe. Got a 2-barrel on it. and it still has the factory catalytic converter, but that's all that's on there right now is just the cat. There's nothing else after it. Um, it is really peppy. It like it goes, and I'm like, I don't know if it has like 323 gears in it or something, but I was impressed with it, especially considering it's been sitting for so long. I have not gone through and done anything with the carburetor. The choke works great. The accelerator pump's not having any kind of issue. It did sink to float when I first got it. You can see that in the video, but it hasn't had problems since. I haven't even tuned it up yet. No, I mean, it still has the wires that have been on it for God knows how long. And it fires right up. It runs so smooth. And like I said, it's got a little pep to it. And I'm like, why? Why is it doing that? I don't know. Maybe that's just how all the 301s are. Um, but I really dig driving it. I think it's a lot of fun. Uh, just a big old boat that floats around. Goes over railroad tracks with no problem, and it doesn't jar your teeth loose or nothing. What am I going to do with it? I have no idea. I bounce around between. Well, let's just play with it. Take the cat off. Put a nice dual exhaust on it. Maybe put a 4-barrel intake on it if it's not already a 4-barrel with that dual jet that's on there. Um, you know, Play with it that way. Maybe change gears if it has a lame gear in the rear end. Um, you know, have some fun with it and just see where it goes from there, and do something budget. Some people said put a turbo on it, but I already got a turbo car. I don't know if I want to put a turbo on that thing. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes from there. Let's see what else. Yeah, so did the whole. Oh, well, yeah, we'll get to that in a second on my list. We got some questions coming in. Have you been following Bill Webb's Super Pace Car 383 build and this discussion on timing at idle? Any thoughts on that or the build if you have been? The timing discussion. I've seen it on there. I really don't really have a comment about it. All I could say is it's not something I would do. I think maybe some people get a little confused when they hear about all the timing that he puts into it. That they're like, this thing's going to detonate. I don't think he's talking about that much timing at wide open throttle. I think he's only talking about idle and cruising. And I think some people misinterpret it as that's the timing he's got locked in it at all for the entire RPM range and load. I know he talks about, well, you listen for detonation, you back it down a couple degrees. Yeah, not the way I would do things, but if that's how he wants to run it, that's how he wants to run it. But I'll just leave it at that. I've seen his posts, and I'm sure everybody has. So again, like I said, not something I would do, but if it works for him and that's what he wants to do, go for it. Don't know unless you try, I guess. What else? Ray Soto, how's the large runner 301 intake coming along? Okay, well, as you may have saw, no, maybe you haven't seen it, unless you're on Facebook. Facebook, we just tested the engine. I'm editing the video right now on being on the engine dyno with that engine with that intake manifold. So we can get into that discussion. I'm gonna go grab some water. Cheers to everybody. So the large intake, I think it definitely made a difference. I think we did flow more air. Obviously, we made 408 horsepower, 500 foot-pounds of torque, all around 4,000 RPM. It did. I think it had. I mean, we were only at 14 pounds of boost. We could have gone higher, and timing was pretty conservative too. We did do a plug read for the timing, and we weren't even near the radius of the ground strap yet. We were still at the very tip of the ground strap. So we could have probably put a couple more degrees of timing in it. I think I probably could have got it to 420, 425 horsepower. But the guy running the dyno was like, I think you should stop. And I was like, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, maybe we should stop. I didn't want to, it's not my motor. It's not my engine. It's a customer's engine. I know I'm going to be putting it in his car. It's going in a Daytona 500 pace car. It's going to have 373 gears and a 204R overdrive and a 2500 stall converter in it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I could always take it to the chassis dyno and see if there's more in it. It's going to be interesting to take it to the chassis dyno because now we're going to have a comparison of crankshaft horsepower versus wheel horsepower. But there was some things that we're thinking is a restriction still, not in the intake. I have this saying now that I like to use, saying that you're only as good as your next restriction. I think we're finding the next restriction is going to be the plenum, the transition from the carb to the turbo. We did some testing. We had a vacuum sensor. You'll see it in the video. We had a vacuum sensor right in front of the 6-bolt flange for the compressor housing on the plenum, and we were drawing some good amounts of vacuum at 14 pounds of boost at the higher RPM. So if I'm reading that right and I'm testing that right, that's telling me that the turbo's demanding more air and it can't get it. Now, I don't think it's from the throttle body. I don't think the throttle body is a restriction, the throttle bores. I think there's plenty of CFM flow from the throttle body, from that Holley Sniper. I think it's the transition, because I had also tested on my car. I tested in the same spot on my car and got even higher vacuum, but I was running more boost also. But I also tested on one of the vacuum ports of the throttle body, and at the throttle body, the vacuum is not as high. In fact, there's barely any vacuum there. So I'm almost thinking that the throttle body's fine, but once you get beyond the transition into the compressor, that's where the restriction is. So I've got some ideas on that. I've got some ideas. I'm really excited to try it out. I've got some things being in process of being prototyped. It's going to be interesting. It's not going to really look factory though, but the turbo will still be mounted on the intake manifold. It's still going to use a factory style turbo, but the whole plenum idea is going to be a little different. But I am excited to try that out and prototype something. Of course, I'll show it to you guys as soon as I get something made up. But 408 horsepower, that was pretty cool. Out of 306 cubic inches, it's 30 over. But the video will be coming out on YouTube. More details on the engine, the modifications done. Not only does it have the larger intake manifold, which now we're going to look into what we got to do to produce that intake. It's probably going to be a fabricated intake. Trying to have it cast, I think, is going to be, there's going to be a lot of investment on tooling and the expense of it and the quantity run and everything. I don't think it's something I want to get into and spend that kind of money on. So we're going to look into trying to keep it at a reasonable price if we do sell it, and it would still be a fabricated welded intake manifold. But we'll just keep plugging along. We're having fun, trying out all these different things. But see what else we got going on. Anybody else have any other questions? Doesn't seem that way. And then of course, my car in running at the drag strip, we did do, we had a personal best again, 1246, 109. We saw it in the video. That was That was a stunner. You should have seen my face when I got that time slip because I did not expect it to go that fast. Um, I think track conditions were good that day. It hooked up pretty well. The 60 foot wasn't its best 60 foot either. It's gone 181 60 foot. I think on that pass it was like 187. So if I could have left on more boost and got a better 60 foot, it probably would have even done better by a little bit. But still very exciting. Just that car surprises the heck out of me every time. And I mean, it's still got awesome oil pressure. It runs great. It whistles like a diesel with a 3-inch downpipe with a cutout on it. It's just hilarious. So many people. My wife was in the stands, and I'll do the burnout, and you just hear the turbo whistling, and people in the stands are like, "Oh, that car's swapped." Something else going on under the hood. No, still the 301. I've had people come over to me in the pits with have this look on their face, like, what am I looking at? One guy actually asked me, "Oh, 455?" No, it's 301. So, so anyway, yeah, the 1246 is awesome. What else do we got going on? Let's see. We are usually I'm not a big fan of doing the whole stroker engine thing with the 301 block. I just like to play with what's currently there because it just seemed like it was so difficult to not difficult, just it required a lot of mods in order to run a stroker crank, and the long stroke of a 400 crank and the trying to find a short enough connecting rod and having this really low compression height piston with this wrist pin in the oil ring groove and trying to keep everything in the deck of the block just wasn't my cup of tea. I did have a customer come to me though and ask if I would do a stroker engine for him using a 301 turbo block, but he actually went and got a custom ground crankshaft, forged crankshaft that is 3.25 inch stroke. So it's in between, 400 or 326 through 400 cranks are 3 3/4, 3.75 stroke. Your 301 is a 3-inch stroke. Well, he had a 3.25 stroke made. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And then he sized everything else out, bought all the components, sent me the crankshaft, sent me LS connecting rods, sent me LS pistons, did all the calculation, compression height, all that stuff. It will get aluminum heads. It's going to be quite the build. It's going to be twin turbo. Right now it's looking like it's going to be twin turbo. We're actually going to be showing that one soon on the build because the engine is almost done at the machine shop. It did have a main bearing for a 400, so we ended up doing a custom spacer for the thrust bearing. But that's going to be an interesting one when we get it back. So just a little teaser that we are working on a stroker setup for a customer. What else do we have here? BNR Racing. Are you using the stock 301T crankshaft? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Depending on the build, the motor in my car, the engine is not built. It's stock. Stock crankshaft, standard bearing, standard GM 1981 GM bearings are still in it. The stock rods. It even has stock dished cast pistons from Pontiac from 1981. That's what's in my car. I've ring gapped it. All the other builds that we do, yes, we still use the 301T crankshaft in them. I have an awesome machine shop, Don's Auto Parts here in Kenosha, who does an excellent job balancing them. Especially with the forged piston. The forged piston that I'm using is much lighter than the stock piston. They have to remove quite a bit of weight out of the rods and everything, which I think actually helps the situation. And then on the bigger builds, like the one with the intake manifold, the 400 horsepower engine, we have studs in the mains that we do. It's a kind of a custom setup. We have the main cap machined for stepped washers and the main studs, and we're doing solid dowel pins for the align, getting rid of that split roll pin that they had for the alignment dowel. Trying to strengthen it up a little bit. ARP connecting rod bolts, but it is the stock connecting rod in it. But yeah, we're still using that crankshaft. A lot of people think that crankshaft's weak, but um, I don't know really if it is. I mean, yeah, it doesn't have counterbalance weights in it, but am I trying to spin it to 6,000, 6,500? No. Trying to stay within some limits and just take it easy, especially on the tune, and try not to get too crazy with it. Let's see, B&R Racing. I'm a Pontiac 455 guy for decades now, but I'm interested in a Pontiac 301 and 301T for a daily driver. Engine swap into non-F-body usage. Okay, cool. Yeah. It's pretty neat that there's more and more people that don't just automatically want to toss it overboard as a boat anchor right away. I've had a couple people that some were trying to do like some fuel economy stuff. I think I had one customer doing a rebuild on a 301. He was putting in like a 70 Firebird. It was a naturally aspirated engine. And now I'm starting to every once in a while get somebody that wants to actually convert a turbo car back to a turbo because it's got a Pontiac 350 in it or some other engine, and they're actually looking to go back to a turbo and keep it original, which I think is great. I never thought it would actually come to that, but that's good news. Just curious, B&R Racing, what kind of car are you trying to put it in? Actually, I had a guy in Canada once that I sold some parts to that actually put a 301 turbo motor in a 52 Pontiac sedan delivery. I thought that was an interesting use of the engine too. What was Pontiac Engineer's idea with 3 counterweights? Is it balanced to first, second, third order of harmonics? Good question. I'm not an expert in balancing. Technically, there's only 2 counterbalance weights. There's one at the snout and one at the back by the flywheel. Everywhere else in the middle, there's nothing. It's just rod and main journals. Almost looks like a camshaft with that small short stroke. But yeah, the only, I don't know. I think they were just trying to reduce weight. You have to understand the 301 was originally designed to be a fuel economy and emissions motor. I mean, at the time, everybody was kind of doing that. I mean, if you look back in the late 70s into the early 80s, I always joke. This is my take on it. This is with the manufacturers out there and being under the strict under the regulation from the government of we gotta have federal emissions meet these requirements through the years, and we have to have fuel economy meet these requirements through the years, and they kept ratcheting it up and everything, and they had such a short timeline to do this stuff. The manufacturers didn't have time to innovate and design and try to come up with better efficient engines. They basically scrambled and said, what do we currently have tooling of that we can use, and how do we get it to meet these requirements for emissions and fuel economy? So I think the first thing they ever thought of was take in less air, you burn less fuel. So you got these tiny ports, tiny valves, tiny intake manifolds, take weight out of everything because weight savings is fuel economy. Small camshafts and everything for better emissions, all this stuff. So you ended up with the Pontiac 301 and then the Pontiac 265, and then Oldsmobile made the 260. Ford made a 255 cubic inch and a 221 cubic inch V8. Who else was there? Chevrolet had the 267. They had all these little tiny economy V8s. And so that's probably why the crankshaft is the way it is in the 301, is because it was never designed to be a performance motor from day one. I think they slapped the turbo on it then. I know they slapped the turbo on it because they didn't want to put a Chevy motor in the car. By then, the 400 was gone after 79. The 403 couldn't pass emissions anymore. They were going to be stuck with a 305, which the third gens ended up getting. So yeah, the 301, Buick was successful with their turbo. They borrowed the idea and slapped it onto 301, and it worked. Well, it kind of worked. It did what it was supposed to do. I always tease that performance was third. when it came to the 301 and the Trans Am. First was emissions, second was fuel economy probably, but performance was, oh, if there's anything left for performance, it's a bonus. But anyway, that's probably why it is the way it is. Block will twist before the crank breaks. Yeah, probably. Let's see. Oh, you might put the 301 in your 2008 Mitsubishi Raider pickup. Okay. Wow. That'd be kind of neat. Is made of a Dodge Dakota chassis from 2000. Oh, okay. All right. I see. They kind of shared because didn't Isuzu and the S10, they were siblings for pickup trucks. I think in like this 90s, the mid to late 90s, I think there was the Isuzu Pup, I think it was called, but it kind of looks like an S10. I've seen 8 counterweights, custom Crowder crankshaft for Pontiac V8 NHRA Super Stock here in Illinois. Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't see, you totally could probably have SCAT or somebody, one of the crankshaft manufacturers make a custom crankshaft for the 301. I just don't know if it would really be how necessary it would be. I just like using the factory stuff because it's there. Let's see how far we can go with it, rather than trying to do something completely custom. I think I probably stated it before where, to me, by the time you added everything up, you take a 301 block. Okay, I'm going to put a 326 through 400 crankshaft in it. I'm going to make it a 383. And now you're dealing with the thrust main as an issue. It's wider on the 400 style block. So you got to deal with the thrust main. You got to deal with trying to find a connecting rod short enough to get the piston to stay in the block. You go with a custom piston, again, with a short deck height or short compression height to get it to stay in the block. Then you're like, I got all this cubic inch, but you're going to try to feed it through the little 301 heads, those Siamese intake port heads. Well, now you got to put a bigger head on it to take advantage of the cubic inch. Okay, well, now we're dealing with a custom head gasket, or trying to make use of an available head gasket, and we got coolant port issues that things don't line up. Things are potential leaks, especially if you're using a factory cast iron head. Now you got a narrow intake manifold that you got to make to use the conventional style intake ports. You're doing all this stuff. By the time you're all said and done, what do you have? A short deck 383. And it's like, I could build a 389, couldn't I? And still be close to that cubic inch. I'm not saying that it's wrong. All I'm saying is just not my cup of tea. It's just not where I wanted to go with it. I just didn't see it could be done. It totally can be done, and it probably perform really well. And just not my big thing, which is fine. Oh, let's see, what else do we have? I'm learning. I think I went through all my notes pretty much. Make sure everything's up to there. Let's see, what do we have? Did Pontiac use, oh wow, you guys have a lot of questions that are not showing up in my other screen. I'm working on a friend's 8301 Turbo Trans Am off and on. I'm surprised how well it drives. MSD 6 BTM ignition box on it, factory electronic spark control died. Yeah, that's common. So you have the MSD box. I'm not a big fan of that boost timing module, and here's why. It's a fixed rate. So you're dealing with, I want to take 1 degree out per pound of boost, or I want to take 1.5 or 2 degrees out per pound of boost. To me, it's either there's a trade-off somewhere. Either you're taking more timing out than you need to at some point, or you're not taking enough timing out where you need to at some point. Because like on my car, I have my timing set that, I don't know, what is it? At one time I had it to where if it made any boost, it locked out the timing to 24 degrees, but I've gotten a little bolder and let it have some more timing at low boost. But let's just take a round number and just say 10 degrees and above, 10 pounds and above of boost, I'm locked at 24 degrees timing. Well, in a MSD 6 BTM, you are continuing to remove timing. So where do you stop? I mean, if you're at 24 degrees at 7 pounds and you're taking out 1 pound per 1 degree per pound of boost, and you want to go to 14, well, now you're going to kill 7 more degrees of timing out of it. So now you're at 17 when you're at 14 pounds of boost, and it's like you're leaving power on the table. It wants more timing than that. So I know that the electronic spark control is always a problem as far as, they'll die and then you won't have spark. But my biggest thing is we bypass them so that there's no problem. Everybody, I know some people are like, oh, you need that for the turbo. It has to be there. No, it doesn't. Because if you do everything right and you have the premium fuel, you have the correct amount of boost for what you can run safely, you have the correct fuel mixture going on, it won't get into detonation. And you want to tune for the most amount of timing that makes power that you can under boost without getting into detonation. And I mean, getting that even the factory spark control box involved to where it has to kill timing because it's in detonation, you're just losing power anyway because something's wrong. Either you don't have the correct octane, you got too much boost, you got too much timing, whatever it is. Correct it and let it run the way it's supposed to, and you'll be fine. That's just my take on it. I know it does work well, though, and a lot of people use it. Let's see. What did I miss? Let's see. Did Pontiac use forged pistons in the 301T or cast with steel struts? They are cast with a steel strut and very heavy. Pontiac never used anything forged in the turbo motor. Armor steel cast rods used in all 301s. I don't know if they're armor steel, but they are cast rods. I know they're cast rods. BNR Racing, his 301 T has 150,000 miles, never opened. Still has 80 psi oil pressure cold. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, if they're well cared for or not, I think these cars really got into a bad situation or just, a bad reputation because a lot of people just beat the heck out of them and just ran them beyond their safe zone, we'll call it. They're revving them too high. They're beating them to death with pinging. I mean, I get calls a lot where people are like, I just bought this car and, it wouldn't start. And they didn't know that it had a spark control box, the electronic spark control timing. And, finally we just put a 78-400 distributor in it. Well, if you don't know where the timing's supposed to be when it's under boost and you're putting too much timing in it, well, now you're just killing it with detonation. I ripped off the Quadrajet and, put a XYZ carb on it, or I put a carb on it from my, 76 350, whatever, and now it's too lean, and they don't know it's too lean, but, they start changing all these things around. My buddy came over and timed it, and he's a Chevrolet guy. He said there was no timing in it. I put 30, we had to put 36 degrees in it. You're probably going to make ashtrays out of the cast pistons at that point. So that's where I think there's like, oh, it's unreliable. It's unreliable. Well, if it's being beat to death and run outside its means, then yeah, it's going to die. Let's see. It said it's Trans Am with 6 BTM CDI equipped for 25 total. Dial setting number 2. Okay. Very good. Yeah, whatever works. I mean, every car is different. Do what works. Like I said, even being on the dyno this last time, and I was at 26 degrees of timing with it, it still seemed like it was plenty safe and could have used more timing. Something to experiment with. And like I said, there's not one set rule that is the way to go that works. Every engine's different. Every engine wants something different, and you just go with what works and makes power. As long as it's safe, that's the biggest thing. I think my car, I've got it down to 22 degrees of timing when it hits 17 or 18 pounds of boost, or if it touches 18 pounds of boost, mainly because I just want to keep it safe. I'll sacrifice some horsepower just to make sure it's well away from detonation. Yeah, so let's see. In the future here, we've got some things that we want to try. We're probably going to play around with some stock 301 cylinder heads some more, mainly focusing on the combustion chamber, some things that we want to test, and see if that makes an improvement. Not necessarily improvement in flow, but just improvement in tuning. You know, what else do I have written down? Talked about the intake manifold mods, especially the near the plenum area and stuff. Yeah, other than that, you guys got any other questions? We got 17 people on. We got an hour into it, so we'll probably be ending it soon anyway. I do want to try one thing though, since we are on the mobile device, can we actually go take a little walk and see if I can switch this around? Will it let me? Ah, yes, it does. So this is what we're currently working on, and we'll probably have some video of this. It's an 81 Daytona 500 pace car. This is Sam's car. We did do some video of this. This is the one that had an issue with the intake valve on number 3 cylinder not sealing. There was a little sliver of it that was not sealing, and we had low compression on one cylinder. Ended up going through the whole motor because it had some what I call shoddy machine work. There was 30 over pistons in it that were cast, but the crankshaft, when they balanced it, had some weights welded in it, and I was not a fan of it. Some other areas too were not the best, but we ended up going through it. We replaced the crankshaft with another good one, and then put our forged pistons in it, rebalanced the whole assembly, redid the heads. This has got a stage 5 turbo. It's getting the 2.5-inch downpipe and exhaust system. Other than that, probably up the boost, probably put water injection on it. Still going to be carbureted, but we're hoping to have this one fired up next week. I don't know if we really have anything else going on. I guess we could go over real quick to the other side here. This engine here, for anybody that was on Facebook, this is the engine that we just picked up, the 81301 naturally aspirated engine. And yeah, we kind of posted and said, hey, guess the year of it. It is an 81. And mainly the focus was, the giveaway was the solenoid mounted on the valve cover. That's an 81 only deal for the engine computer, along with the knock sensor being on the back of the motor right there. That's another indicator of 81. But we'll have a short little YouTube video kind of pointing things out on the differences, the special features of 81 non-turbos. There's a lot of one-off, one-year-only parts on it. Something I thought was really interesting. Look at how skinny that pipe is. It is like way smaller than the turbo pipe. That's a tiny little guy. Yeah, other than that, let's see. Anybody need a 200 metric transmission that came with the 81? It's a lockup torque converter version, but I'm not, these things are kind of worthless, I think. But go back to sitting down. We got a few more questions coming in. Take a look at real quick. Well, that worked out pretty well, I hope. And the walk around with the camera. Let's see. Is it true the 301T uses the Ram Air Force 60 psi oil pump like I heard decades back? It uses the M54 DS Melling pump, which is the 60 psi pump. Yes. What else did I miss here? Yeah, for some reason I'm not updating on my other screen. Unless I'm supposed to scroll or something. No. Rick, Joe can tell you for sure, but in my experience, no, unless someone out it in. I don't know what that was in regards to. Sorry. David Forte, Joe, I want to create my own 301 high output, enough to get close to 300 horsepower naturally aspirated. This will be great for car show conversations. Okay. Yeah, that would be pretty interesting. I found the 389, 350, 400, 421 arm steel rods are actually pretty strong. The engine tune is key. Yes, I agree. The engine tune is key. I think, didn't I just see, or I thought somebody had just come, Scooter's Garage, 301 rods are armor steel. Okay, good to know. Gonna go after the naturally aspirated record. Which record? 301 NA record. No, I don't have any plans on doing that. Oh, Rick, you want the 200 trans? It's a 3-speed. It's not an overdrive. I know that I've heard of drag racers liking the 200 metric because of its low internal component weight. Like there's less rotating mass, and plus it has a little bit deeper first gear than a turbo 350. I always thought they wanted the non-lockup version, which I think is only 77, 78. I think 79 it went lockup. I don't know. You want to pay for the shipping, you can have it. What is the naturally aspirated record? I don't even know. And which kind of is it like an NHRA record that you're talking about? Because I just go to the drag strip to have fun. I'm not trying to, set any kind of records or anything. I don't even think we have anything like that as like a sanctioned type of body or anything to record anything like that. But wow, Scooter's Garage, 380 horsepower, naturally aspirated. Very nice. Very nice. I'm sure there's a lot of work done to that. Single 4-barrel. Cool. Put it in the oil pump. When I disassembled them, they were the standard pump. Really? A turbo motor had standard pumps in it? I mean, I know the naturally aspirated ones I think did. I don't know. I've always used the M54DS in every build that I've done for the 301s, for the turbo motors. It works the best. I always thought they put the bigger oil pump in the turbo because of the turbo oil line to feed it. Price point of 301 engines are attractive to me. Also, Pontiac 350s are selling for $1,100 now in Survivor Core. Wow, I didn't know the 350s were doing that. It's so interesting that the 350 has a smaller bore than the 301. I just find that funny. Just all the differences in between 326 and 400 is all in the bore size. They all have the same crank. But what else do we have here? Let's see. Oh, no, same thing. I didn't miss anything. Well, I think we'll wrap it up from there. We're in it for an hour. Thanks everyone that came to watch the live. Appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll try to do this once a month. Like I said, try to bring it back. More questions coming in. Are you using stock rods with upgraded bolts? Yes, depending on the build. Most of the time we do upgrade the bolts with the ARP ones. But yeah, stock rods. Every time we do rod bolts, the rods get resized. In fact, my machine shop resizes everything to get the bearing clearances that we want. Have I used Chevy rods, LS rods, or Honda rods? No, I have not replaced rods in any of my 301s yet. I've been using the factory rods. I know some people have used, it's a 2-inch journal. It's very similar to the early small block Chevy 283, 327 rods. They're 50,000 shorter in a Chevy. It's 6050 in a 301, 6-inch for most of the small block Chevys, and you might be able to get longer ones for small block Chevys. But no, at this point I haven't changed any of the connecting rods yet. So, well, that wraps it up. I'm going to call it. It's a Friday. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my evening. You should too. Thank you guys for everything. And we'll talk to you next time. Take care.